Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well today. This video is going to be taking a look at Margaret Cavendish on the intelligence of matter, panpsychism, and perception or sensation. So in this video we'll start out by introducing three kinds of matter that Cavendish has in her philosophical system, and then we'll talk about her reasons for thinking that matter is intelligent. We'll talk about her use of the interaction problem and what I'm going to call her motion argument. Then we'll look at her reasons for panpsychism, for thinking that this intelligence is sort of spread out throughout all of the sort of universe. We'll look at her same matter argument, her self-motion argument, and an appeal to the orderliness of nature. Then lastly, we'll look at the sort of mechanisms by which she tries to explain sort of sensation occurring in matter. So Cavendish distinguishes between three kinds of matter. There's inanimate matter, this is the non-self-moving matter, and then there's animate matter, there's the self-moving matter. And this is sort of distinguished in two forms. There's the sensitive matter, the matter that sort of has experience, and then there's rational matter, which has thought or understanding. So why should we believe that matter is capable of experience or sensation and reason? Well, her first appeal is to basically the interaction problem. The idea is we have a mind with experience and reason. We all know this from our own sort of experience. We have sensations, we have sort of thoughts. And our mind sort of interacts with matter. Our thoughts, our perceptions get us to move. When we feel the heat of the fire and we feel pain, that gets us to move our arm back. Well, how does our experience do that? Well, according to Cavendish, only a material substance could interact with a material substance. We can't explain how an immaterial substance, it's sort of mysterious how an immaterial substance could get sort of matter to move. And so, therefore, our mind, our experience and reason must themselves be material substances, is the idea. Now, I'm not going to go into this interaction problem in a lot of detail since we've already looked at it in Descartes. So another reason she gives is what I'm going to call the motion argument. And I think this is a rather clever argument as well. She says, look, our minds have a location and are capable of motion and movement. So our minds seem to be located where our bodies are, and they seem to move with our bodies. So, for instance, my thoughts, my sensations, it looks like they're occurring in Auburn, Alabama right now. If I were to get on a plane and fly to Paris, then me and my mind, looks like my mind would have moved to Paris. My mind would have come with my body. But according to Cavendish, only material substances are capable of motion or movement. Can you conceive of movement or motion without matter? It is insofar as you can't conceive of motion without matter, motion must always be identified with matter. And thus, if our mind moves, it too must be made of matter. Thus, our mind, experience, and reason must be a material substance. Now, but it's not just us. It's not just human beings that have sensation and experience. She thinks this applies to everything across nature. She accepts what's sometimes called panpsychism. This is the view that all things in nature either have a mind or have a mind-like quality, maybe experience, very rudimentary, simple experiences in simpler creatures. So it's also sometimes associated with the view that all things have life. So the idea is, on Cavendish's view, animals also have minds. Now, she brings up the argument that Descartes had that, well, Descartes said, no, animals are mere autonoma. And his main argument was that they cannot communicate their thoughts to us like we can. So the evidence that I have that you are thinking is the fact that you can communicate your thoughts to me. But he says, well, animals cannot communicate their thoughts. They cannot use language. And so he thought that sort of meant that they had no rational mind. But Cavendish's reply is that doesn't prove that they don't have minds. Maybe they just have minds that are different than our own. So not every mind is going to be exactly the same. I mean, they'll be similar. And so the fact that they can't communicate their thoughts to us doesn't mean that they don't have thoughts. They just might have different thoughts that we can't understand. But none of this is to say that animals do have minds. Moreover, it's not to say that plants or cells have minds, which on Cavendish's view, everything does have minds of some sort. So her first argument for this idea that sensation and reason is sort of ubiquitous throughout nature is what I'll call the same matter argument. She says all matter is partly animate and partly inanimate, and all matter is moving and moved. And there's no part of nature that hath not life and knowledge, for there is no part that has not a commixture of animate and inanimate matter. And so here's how we might understand this kind of argument. So we human beings have sensation and reason. We know this from our own sort of first-person experience. Well, human beings, though, are made from nothing more than matter, or at least our minds are made of nothing more than matter. And yet again, we've already seen her try to establish that it must be the case on the grounds that our minds move and on the grounds of the interaction problem. So the matter from which humans are made must be capable of sensation and reason. Well, everything else in nature is made from the same kind of stuff that human beings are. So it's the same kind of matter that makes us up as anything else up, like the animal or a plant. And thus, if this matter has sensation and reason, and it also composes other things, then everything else in nature must also be capable of sensation and reason. Now, there's also a kind of appeal to sort of self-motion. There's this idea that we've talked about before that motion can't be transferred from one piece of matter to another. And so matter must be self-moving. There must be some internal principle by which it moves itself. But that is, if matter is self-moving, if there's some internal principle, it must be sort of alive, and it must have knowledge in order to move itself. It must understand what it's supposed to do and thereby bring it about that it does it, that it moves in that way. And all things in nature involve movement, even those things that we can't see. So remember that idea of even if the world was a piece of gold, even if we can't see motion on the outside, there's motion going on in the inside. Thus, all things in nature must have life and knowledge. Now, in other places that we didn't read, I'm just going to suggest this because we didn't sort of go through this reading, but she suggests that we need an explanation for the orderliness of nature. So she thinks the only explanation available is that all things in nature are composed of intelligent matter that is self-moving. The idea is the motion of matter can't come from immaterial stuff due to the interaction problem, and the motion of matter can't be explained by purely mechanical forces, since this would result in a universe that's entirely the same everywhere. So the idea is, if there just was no sort of motion, then everything would just be sort of indistinguishable. Like the world would just be everywhere the same, such you couldn't distinguish one part from another. There wouldn't be a sort of variety in the kinds of things, or there wouldn't be variety in the parts of sort of the universe. All right. Or if there was motion going on, there would just be sort of complete chaos, since there'd be no rhyme or reason to take those motions and put them in an orderly fashion that was understandable. But when we look at the world, the idea is we see that there are a variety of things that exist, and we see that it's not just chaos. We see that things are ordered in a very specific way. So the idea is, like plants, for instance, are well adapted to their environment. Animals are well adapted to their environment. You see sort of ecosystems that are all sort of well organized in this way. And she says that order of the way everything sort of works together in this fashion and this variety of things needs an explanation. Where does that come from? And she says there must be some knowledge, some principle that is allowing matter to organize itself. Now, this is interesting because oftentimes during sort of Cavendish's time, a little bit later, William Paley will later suggest that the orderliness of nature is actually an argument for God being the one that sort of puts matter in motion. But according to Cavendish, we should think that this order comes from a principle sort of internal to nature itself, because she rejects the mechanistic view of nature. And so instead of seeing the order as being explained by God, The order is explained by the knowledge and understanding and intelligence that nature itself has. But now you might just say, how does sensation and matter work? So Cavendish holds that sensation belongs to the part of the matter that we call the body. The mind is also made out of matter, but she thinks it's made from rational matter, has sort of abstract thought. And so whenever we actually perceive a table, we have a sensation of it and we have an understanding of it. So in our body we have a sensation, but we have this other rational matter that has sort of an abstract thought. So we sort of have what she calls double knowledge of it, or a double perception almost, via the sensation in matter, and then the rational matter as well understands it. But sensation is sort of distributed amongst all the parts of the body. So the things we feel, the things we experience, they're not just in the brain, for instance. They're at every little part. In our fingers, our nose, all of them are capable of sensation. So sensation is produced by the relevant matter sort of copying the motions of matter that it's sensing. So on her view, when I have a visual sensation of a table in front of me, the way that works is it's not that some aspect of the table is sort of transferred to me. Rather, via a sort of chain of contact, my eyes, the matter in my eyes, gains knowledge of the emotions that are going on in the table, so to speak. And the matter in my eyes, that motion doesn't transfer from the table to my eyes. Rather, my eyes, the matter in my eyes, are aware of that motion and then sort of copy out the motion. They use their own self-motion to rearrange themselves to make their motion sort of copy or pattern the motion in the table. And that is what the sensation is. It's just the motion in the matter copying the motion of the thing that it's sensing. And that's supposed to apply to everything, to touch, to sight, to hearing, to smell, to taste. All of the sensations we have is just a patterning out of the motions of the objects of those sensations. So that's all for this video. See you next time. Bye-bye.